Hello, everyone. Just welcome today to our webinar. My name is Salmon McCoy, and on behalf of the Atlantic Salmon Conservation Foundation, which is now the Foundation for Conservation of Atlantic Salmon, we'd like to say welcome and thank you for joining us. And also the series, when we do our webinars every year, is also made possible in part thanks to the contribution of Government of Canada. For today's webinar, we're really pleased to have Rachel Duval here with us. Rachel is a seasoned leader with over 17 years of experience in policy, regulatory, and legislative development for Fisheries and Oceans Canada. She holds a master's degree in political science from Carleton University. In her current role as acting director of domestic fisheries policy, Rachel leads a team of 25 people dedicated to policy development. She excels at establishing a vision and strategic path forward for her organization, developing and maintaining relationships with internal and external stakeholders. But above all, she loves sharing her knowledge and mentoring her staff to deliver on department mandates. Today, she's going to be speaking on the Wild Atlantic Salmon Strategy and what they heard, or what we heard. That's the title for today. So before going any further, I just will pass it over to Rachel so she can start her presentation and share the information with us. So thanks, Rachel.
Merci beaucoup, Charlene. Thank you, Charlene. As Charlene said, my name is Rachel Duval. I'm the Acting Director of Domestic Fisheries Policy. Certains d'entre vous me connaissent aussi en français. Donc, je suis Rachel Duval, je suis la directrice intérimaire du groupe des politiques des pêches domestiques. Si vous avez des questions aujourd'hui en français, n'hésitez pas, ma présentation sera en anglais. So before we start, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'm located in Gatineau, and this is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people. So today I'm here to give you an overview of where we are with the strategy. I would like to present to you some background on how we are developing it, our engagement process, who we heard from, and what we heard, including the vision, the lifetime of strategy, and key themes that emerged through the engagement. And most importantly, I think for a lot of you, we'll be talking about the next steps. So here on the slide, if you want to have access to the strategy, we've put a little QR code here. So I'll give you a few seconds if you're interested to pull that out and get the what we heard report. Now, as we move to the background section, so even before we started on the engagement on the strategy, it was important for us to learn from what had already been said regarding Atlantic salmon conservation. We knew a lot of really great work had already been done, and a lot of reports had been provided to the department before. So we wanted to start from an informed place before we moved forward. So we looked at various reports, recommendations, and plans. We looked at the Minister's Advisory Committee on Atlantic Salmon from 2015. We also looked at the recommendations from the Standing Committee of Fisheries and Oceans report on wild Atlantic salmon in Eastern Canada from 2017. We also looked internally at some of our own document within DFO, so the Wild Atlantic Salmon Conservation Policy, its implementation plan. We also looked at NASCO resolutions and agreements. And finally, we looked at certain of your stakeholders' proposals. So we had a few proposals, such as the Atlantic Salmon Federation's Wild Salmon Watershed that was presented to us, as well as the North Shore Mi'kmaq District Council's Plan Move First report. So through there, we also looked at the science on Atlantic salmon. So we looked at CUSIWIC assessments and status report on Atlantic salmon. We looked at the FCAS reports, the Atlantic Salmon Research Joint Venture Science Plan, and we also benefited from the International Year of Salmon Synthesis Symposium. And finally, we looked at the Indigenous perspectives from FSC consultations, advisory boards, and community proposals. So based on everything the department had heard and learned over many years, we drafted elements of a proposed national strategy for Atlantic salmon, and we put forward that proposal for discussion. From the beginning, we really wanted the engagement to be ongoing. We wanted to build the strategy with people that care for Atlantic salmon, because we all need to work together to improve outcomes for Atlantic salmon. So phase one of our engagement from July 2021 to May 2022 was focused on the implementation plan to develop a status report. We published that report in May 2022. And then our second phase of consultation was really presenting the draft elements of the strategy for feedback. As I said, we had developed those elements through our initial discussions on the implementation plan status report, as well as everything that we had learned before. So we knew going forward with those elements that people would probably see them favorably, because this is what we had heard people wanted, and that was aligned with our goals as well. So this phase included a bit more involved engagement. So we did workshops and meetings, and we also had a public engagement platform online. We also were present, and you may have seen us there at certain of the Foundations Atlantic Salmon Symposium through the fall and spring of 2022-2023. The next phase of engagement, which is coming really soon, will provide the opportunity to comment on the draft strategy. So we're hoping that by early 2024, we will be in position to share with you a complete draft of the strategy that will show you where we're at with things, and will provide you with the opportunity to provide further comments on the strategy itself. And even after that, we really want to continue our engagement and our discussions, dialogue throughout the life cycle of the strategy as we implement and as we monitor progress. So we also heard from Indigenous peoples, and we wanted to respect the relationships and protocol established to engage them. So we did rely on our regional colleagues to support the development of material, as well as to lead the discussions. We engage, and we continue to engage with over 40 Indigenous communities. We reviewed reports, recommendations, and proposals put forward by the Indigenous partners, and we really want to make sure that we make space for their voices to be heard. Now let's dive into the numbers a little bit. In phases 1 and 2 of engagement, we engaged with over 80 organizations through more than 60 different workshops and meetings. We received around 500 submissions to the online questionnaire and 12 proposals and perspectives. Interesting facts about the people we heard from. Location was more concentrated in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. As you can see, 40% of our responders on the online platform were from New Brunswick and 29% from Nova Scotia. The age was also an interesting factor. Most participants in the online engagement were over the age of 65, 42% of them. And then participation from younger audiences between the age of 18 and 24 was very limited. It was about 5%. So we did do some targeted outreach to make sure that we were hearing from younger audiences and younger people that care about Atlantic salmon. So what we did was to facilitate discussions through universities. So we did that with a couple universities where we presented the Atlantic salmon conservation strategy to students, and then we had a discussion about what it meant to them and how we could address conservation for Atlantic salmon. And finally, another interesting fact about people who talked to us was the gender of participants, predominantly male, 87%. And so to address gender bias in online participation, we made an effort to bilaterally engage with women working in the salmon community and organizations headed by women, such as the Foundation, to make sure that we were taking into account the voices of our women leaders. So what did we heard? Our first question was about the vision. We learned from our engagement that participants want to see a strategy that is long-term. So most of them wanted to see a 15-year strategy. And expanded on the idea that the vision should include Atlantic salmon as a legacy for the future, that the vision should recognize the importance of Atlantic salmon fisheries. They wanted to see key threats being mitigated, and then they wanted us, DFO, to use an ecosystems approach to fisheries, to management of Atlantic salmon. There was broad support for the objectives. As I said, we basically developed the objectives in discussions with people, so we were not surprised by the support we got, but we really appreciated everyone's taking the time to actually write in the comment boxes, because that's where we got the most of the comments that will help us refine the strategy. So the key themes that emerged from that first pillar we had, that was addressing key threats, The key themes were managing costs and benefits of existing fisheries, conservation in the context of environmental change, and managing the manageable. So the managing costs and benefits of existing fisheries means taking into account the importance of FSC fisheries for Indigenous people, and more generally, the sociocultural and economic benefits of Atlantic salmon fisheries. For the conservation in the context of environmental change, we heard that climate change was a big piece of the puzzle that we needed to take care of, and also that people wanted us to address those specific changes and manage the impact of environmental changes. And finally, managing the manageable. So throughout, although we had an initial objective related to marine threats, what we discovered through the comments we received was that a lot of participants favored an approach to conservation focused on freshwater. Basically, a lot of people felt that adopting a conservation philosophy of managing the manageable would be a more effective approach to the strategy. There was also broad support for the key theme number 2, which was prioritizing and adopting collaborative management approaches. In this key theme, another 3 themes emerged. So we had a strong support and desire for river-by-river management approaches. We heard that there were barriers to collaborative management that exist within DFO. And we heard that we should be taking a balanced approach to Atlantic salmon enhancement activities. So the first one, there was a strong support for and desire for river-by-river management approaches, which would give greater role to Indigenous peoples, partners, and local organizations. So I think that's the key point here. People wanted to be involved, and that was very clear within the comments that we received. There was also many conversations and suggestions for DFO about how to remove barriers that were seen to collaborative management within DFO. There was a couple of suggestions that we will take into account, and then we also are thinking about how to reorganize our own work within DFO to make it easier for people to reach out to DFO and also to get information from DFO. And finally, we heard about taking a balanced approach to Atlantic salmon enhancement activities. And while the feedback went from do not stock at all to invest in hatcheries from like the Pacific region, there was a strong voice in the middle that was heard. And it was mostly related to use stocking as a management tool where populations are low and alongside other conservation measures such as warm water protocols, for example. The third key theme was, or pillar, was about strong leadership, coordination, and accountability. And here we had 4 themes that emerged more prominently. There was a theme about opportunities for Indigenous leadership and reconciliation. There was a theme about a need for more core leadership attributes to successfully deliver on the strategy. There was a need for better mobilization of people, data, and projects. And finally, there was a desire for relationships based on strong communications, coordination, and collaboration. There was a desire to see DFO in the places that mattered most to people, so on their rivers, in their communities, and at their respective forums for conversation. Many expressed their desire to contribute and to be included in Atlantic salmon conservation. There were also engagement with Indigenous peoples that remain ongoing according to mutually agreed protocols and relationships. This is what we heard from Indigenous people so far. So while relationships, context, fisheries all differ between communities and nations, there were many commonalities that in what we heard from them. They want a future in which Atlantic salmon people have autonomy in making fisheries management decisions. They expressed the need to build nations-to-nations relationship. Indigenous peoples have also expressed their intent to lead in all aspects of Atlantic salmon stewardship, science, knowledge, and management. There were some discussions and comments about FSC rights, so food, social, and ceremonial fisheries rights. There was an importance of long-term approaches and ecosystems approach that was mentioned to us. And finally, there was some consideration, the express desire for DFO to consider the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and existing federal commitments to its implementation and reconciliation more broadly. This reflects and focus on areas where you have a specific knowledge and what you heard. Yes. And so finally, we're at the end of this presentation. So from where to from here? Well, now we have a strategy in development. So we're working to refining the elements of the strategy, and we're aiming to complete drafts to be available for comments in the new year. And based on everything we've learned and heard, the proposed strategy will provide direction for Atlantic salmon conservation activities to restore and rebuild Atlantic salmon populations across Canada. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. It's a great presentation, and just thankful that you'll be able to share all the progress that the department has done with all the presentation and what they heard and how they applied it to strategy forward. This is the time of our webinar session where we give the opportunity for the audience to ask questions so Rachel can answer them. So there's two ways of doing that. You can type it in so I can read it out loud, or you can raise your hand and you'll be unmuted and you can ask your question. So open for those now. I'll just look here to see if there's anybody with questions. I'm sure there will be. We do have some hands raised. So we'll start here with Alex. Let's see. And a request that was sent for you to unmute, Alex, if you want to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay. I had some involvement in Atlantic salmon in the distant past in my career, and one of the frustrations that I had was that there was a strong desire at the time for river by river management, having some model rivers that would demonstrate that concept. That never happened. Have you had any indications that this is a priority throughout your consultation?
We did hear very clearly that people wanted to have river by river management, or what we may call it place-based collaborative management approaches. What we are interested in doing is recognizing certain of those management that are currently being done. So we know that in certain rivers, watersheds, there is already people working together to do that kind of management. We want to formalize that, but we also want to make some space for people to bring in more of those collaborative place-based management approaches. We heard that Quebec's model, river by river, was interesting. We also heard from people that they were interested in trying new things. So that's also something that we're open to. I'm hoping that through the strategy, we will be able to get that more organized.
Well, I will say that it's nice to see this level of consultation rather than top-down fiat from DFO, for which I worked for a while.
Thank you. That's been our goal. Like we truly believe that it's together that we will improve outcomes for Atlantic salmon. DFO won't be able to do that alone. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. We have another question coming in. Tommy, you can go ahead.
Thank you. You hear me okay?
I do.
This is Tommy Linazar from UMB. A question, or I guess it is a question. I think everybody recognizes, including you, that and your team, of course, that to come up with a new Atlantic salmon strategy, there will need to be investment. So basically, there will have to be money involved. Pacific Salmon got a similar strategy a few years ago with a considerable insert of finance from the federal government. But at this time, I'm not an economist. I'm probably the furthest away from economist, but my understanding is that the federal government is not necessarily in the best fiscal situation. And I also remember seeing somewhere that DFO was among the federal departments that, I guess after the Department of Defense was among or is going to face pretty drastic cuts to money being available. If that is so, I read it somewhere, so I don't know the truth of that. But if DFO is in a situation facing actual financial cuts, is there something that the people on the ground who care about salmon, who probably participated in your surveys, can do to try to convince and like how, is there a process we could help DFO so the federal government will see the urgency of the Atlantic salmon cause? Is there something that we can do to help you? Because if your group is going to be left without any finance to attribute to salmon, then that's going to make things challenging.
Thanks, Tommy. You're right. The fiscal realities have changed quite a lot since the mandate commitment that was done in 2021. So we are facing that challenge for sure. DFO continues to support programs that are working to restore and rebuild Atlantic salmon. So we do have grants and contributions in place right now, and we will continue to work with those programs within DFO to ensure that Atlantic salmon sees its fair share of those programs. So there is the Atlantic Ecosystems Restoration Fund, for example, which is providing, I think, somewhere along the line of $36 million over the next 4 years for projects that support the restoration of Atlantic salmon and its habitat. Everyone has a voice. This is a democracy. So if you want to raise this with your MPs, with the minister, you're always welcome to do that. And by doing that, like at a broader level, it for sure helps with creating the space for that, for a specific file to have a bit more profile. So maybe that's my my advice.
Thank you. There is a question that was typed, so I'll do my best to read it out loud. The Atlantic salmon levels are at a critical level throughout New Brunswick, specifically the Miramichi. What immediate steps are in place to prevent New Brunswick's salmon rivers being depleted beyond the point of no return?
That's a good question, and it's a concern that we've heard quite a lot. I don't have any specifics with me right now, but we have people in the region, in the Gulf region, that would be able to help you with that question. So if you want to reach out, and I'm going to call him by name, to Luc Thériault, he's our Atlantic salmon coordinators in the Gulf region. He would most likely be able to help you with more specific on that.
Thank you. Just another question coming in. Let's see here. It says, I understand changes are coming to Section 52, permitting in Gulf region for applications involving salmon. How will this new assessment compare to Section 52 applications submitted for work in the Inner Bay of Fundy region?
Also, sorry, this is very out of my my bailiwick. This would probably be a better a question better answered by the Gulf region. They would know their specifics.
And they say thank you. Let's see, looking for some hands and any more questions coming in. We do have some time. Okay. Lots of times, some folks send questions after the fact. Rachel, I can always send that to you to try to answer or direct them in the right direction to get those answers. So please feel free. Actually, before I move on to my conclusions, there's a couple more hands coming up. So let's give them the opportunity. Okay, just 1 second here. So Kevin Shepard, you can go ahead.
Yes, excuse me. Yes, Michelle, I have a couple of questions or concerns. I am part of the Environmental Resource Management Association, commonly referred to as IRMA, in the Exploits Valley, Exploits River watershed. And it was interesting in your presentation, you talked about both extremes when it comes to what to do in the future with respect to hatcheries. Do we or do we not? On our particular river system, we had a return of about 2,000 salmon until we introduced a hatchery back some years ago, which ironically was terminated because of a similar situation where we're going through now with economic cuts. However, we saw our salmon returns to the river come up from about the 2,000 that were coming until most recently this past year, we were around 30,000 and we've reached a high of over 40. So I guess my question is, I haven't seen the success in the past. I haven't seen the success that happens in BC. Just when will we see some type of decision made somewhere in between those two extremes as to no hatcheries or build, lots of them?
Thank you for your question. Enhancement has been something that we've been looking to work into our strategy for quite some time. We know that the department had promised a policy on enhancement before, and that we truly hope that we will be able to deliver on that in the next couple of years. I'm always super pleased to hear success stories about enhancement. So if you want to provide that, like a little synopsis of your success story for us to be able to highlight in our communications, that would be great. And yes, I think there's place for stocking and for enhancement where it makes sense. And we're hoping that we will be able to provide some more guidance on that in the near future.
Thank you so much, because I know at this point now there is a fair amount of money available for the ecosystem through the AER fund, and which we hope to take advantage of. But with respect to the announcement itself, that hasn't been something that's been really on the table in the past number of years. And I'm really happy to hear you say the words you just said. Thank you so much, because I see that as being very, very positive in being able to restore the stock. All we can do is manage our rivers. We can't manage what happens at sea, but we can manage what happens on our rivers.
Yeah, and it's always a balance, right? We need to make sure that we're not causing more harm than good. So it's always we always need to ensure that that we're moving forward with a positive outcome in the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move to the question for Steve Smith. You should be able to unmute there, Steve.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. Actually, I was going to talk about something else, but just with regards hatchery, that doesn't always have a great response. I know in the US they've done it. I think it's how you do the hatcheries. Where I see the biggest problem is we have a 5% return of smolts on the Northwest Miramichi River. Well, that is not going to sustain a fishery. So I think it's very important that we get more smolts into the ocean, but you want them to be wild. You don't want to be domesticated fish. Nobody wants that in the river system. Okay. But second to that, what are we doing about the striped bass? I mean, there's no question that the striped bass are having an impact on the smolts. So where are we standing there?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily have an answer for you today. I know that this is something that the department's been looking into, and also with our colleagues from the provinces. And I'm hoping that you're going to get some more answers from the department in the near future.
Okay, I hope so. I mean, I find every year we don't even know what the limits are going to be on striped bass, or what, with hook and release on the salmon, which obviously it'll be hook and release. But they come out with the booklet, And then DFO says, oh, by the way, this is what's happening this year. Yet they had all year to figure it out. They can't even get it into the book. So I just like to see them be a little more proactive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we can move to Greg Patterson. You can ask your question. You should be able to unmute. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Test.
Yes.
Yes, I want to echo the comments of Mr. Steve Smith. In the future, if DFO is going to do a webinar like this, that I would strongly encourage a multi-point person who might be able to speak specifically to the issues that are facing a fishery that is in deep jeopardy of being decimated. Specifically, the lack of leadership that we're seeing from DFO. It's a very reactive approach, whether you talk about First Nations attending to the striped bass issue, whether we talk about the lack of funding for our fry hatchery programs, whether we talk about still being able to harvest a wild Atlantic salmon in New Brunswick when it's on an endangered list. All of these pillars, as you mentioned, and you spoke further about a natural balance, are not happening on a timely basis. This is not an attack on you, Rochelle, but you're here and you're representing DFO for us. And we're at the end of the line. All of our data on the Dungarvan, the Northwest, the Maine Southwest, at Casselus, you name the trap net, you name the spot. We're at the world record lows for Atlantic salmon. And we're watching the water drain from the tub as DFO waits to collaborate and creates a new report. So the striped bass is one huge issue. Stocking is a huge issue. Climate change is a huge issue. But when you've got over 1 million striped bass and the natural balance that you wish we had isn't there, you're watching. We're going into year 7 of this surplus of imbalance in our system. We watch DFO watch us as we watch our resources deplete. So you can thank me for my question, but in the future, please bring someone that can speak from the Gulf to us about these specific issues. And please, we want to see actionable change going forward.
I hear you. And I hope that in the future we can have conversations that will be multilateral. In the webinar here, it may not be the right place, but I do hear you. And we know we can do better, and we should do better. And that's why our ministers committed us to doing so in our mandate letter commitment. So I'm hoping that we can bring the group of people together to be able to have those discussions in the future. And I hope that I will be able to hear from you, and my team will be able to hear from you when we go out and we discuss the next version of the strategy. That's for sure.
Okay, I'm going to read a question out loud next, Rachel. The question is the strategy being developed for maritime regions specifically or for all Canada?
For all Eastern Canada. So we're hoping to have a strategy that will apply across the Atlantic salmon range. There are some differences between the various provinces and DFO regions and how we manage the fishery or how we manage the conservation of Atlantic salmon. So there will be some specificity within the regions, but the hope is that the strategy will be applicable to the entire range.
Thank you. The next one refers to the decrease of returns in the Miramichi River in the past years, and then moves to ask, is there a timeline for implementing a strategy for the conservation of Atlantic salmon? I think you touched a little bit on that during your presentation, but maybe a clarification on the timeline and the schedule moving forward.
Yes, so we're hoping to have the complete strategy drafted and available for comments in the early 2024. And once that's done, we're hoping that within 2024, we're going to be able to start implementing on certain aspects of the strategy. As the strategy we're hoping will be good for the next 15 years. Of course, there will be some longer term action items that will be in there, but from the beginning, we really want to be able to demonstrate actions as soon as we can.
There's a few more that are written down. Some are long. I'll do my best to read them. Some are very specific. So let's see here. So the next one here says big concern in Newfoundland and Labrador when it comes to the return of grills to all rivers. Seems the salmon runs were pretty much the same. So are there any numbers on this, on the grills? So is there numbers
Not that I have with me, unfortunately.
So is there a contact where they can get those specific information or someone to refer to?
We do have an Atlantic salmon person in the Newfoundland and Labrador region. His name is Barry Peters.
Next question here is work we did in the inner bay of Fundy, St. Croix, Hants County. We found that all the salmon in that system are directly related to releases through the live gene bank program. Without that hatchery program, there would be no salmon on that system. Hatcheries play a critical role in keeping the species present in the minus bassin, and the program needs to be, just a second, I gotta put my screen a bit bigger to finish the question. Excuse me for a second here. Oh. So without that hatchery program, there'd be no salmon on that system. Hatcheries play a critical role in keeping this species present, and the program needs to be expanded to include all rivers with existing salmon in the inner bay. So I don't know if you can comment on that, Rachel.
Not specifically, but this is something that we can take back. We'll make a note of that and we'll take back that comment.
So those is what I have for written comments. Greg, you still had your hand up. I wasn't sure if you had another question or not. Nope. Okay, Richard Dubois, unmute you. Richard. Richard Dubois, you can ask your question. Richard? All right, we're gonna move on to Kevin Shepard. Kevin?
Yes, thank you again. I just want to clarify a couple of things there. I spoke earlier about some of the successes and the returns on the Exploits River this year, but that's not indicative of what happened across the island of Newfoundland, especially on the west coast. Our west coast rivers this year were almost at an all-time low for most of the rivers. Very, very critical. The Labrador coast as well, the numbers were way down. And I'm pretty sure too on the Quebec lower north shore, because I fished a couple of rivers there in the past. Yeah, I want to make clear that what I said, we did have some success. And in central Newfoundland, our rivers here that are immediately adjacent to the central area was a relatively stable year. Also, with respect to hatcheries, when I talk about that, my intention would be, an idea would be, that all hatcheries be stocked by native fish from that particular river, as was the case that happened here at the Exploits River years ago. They were fished from our river, and the hatchery was open, and we had a very successful program developed from that. I just want to make that clear, that if there is to be a hatchery or anything in any rivers, it should be using the fish that are native right to that particular river. Just a little clarification on what I said earlier. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So Richard, you have your hands raised. We'll try one more time to see if we can get you unmuted, Richard. Go ahead. Hello. Yeah, must be having technical difficulties on your end. Okay, so Greg, you have your hand up as well. Greg Patterson? No, his hand's down. So it looks like we're getting to the end of questions. One last one that's written up here. Rachel, can you tell us anything that will encourage us that change is coming in a meaningful way?
I think the strategy will be a great tool for the department to refocus itself. We're hoping that by having the strategy in place that's been built with people, the department will be able to improve on how it works around Atlantic salmon. So right now, we're really siloed, as you may imagine. Everyone works on their own path, and we're trying to make connections, but it's not always easy. With the strategy, the hope is that we're going to be able to work together better. We're going to be reorganizing a bit of work, how we communicate with each other. So hopefully that's going to give you and other stakeholders a better way to communicate with DFO, and it's going to make DFO be a bit more I guess nimble and successful in how it manages Atlantic salmon.
Okay, thank you. One more to squeeze in there, and what we do, if there seems to be a lot of questions today, which is wonderful, it's a great opportunity to do that. So anything that comes up after this session, I'll make sure that Rachel gets a copy, and we got everybody's contact information, so we'll make sure to do our best to get back to you here. We'll go to the hands that are raised here. So we got two more, Rachel, Nathan Wilbur and Vanessa McLaughlin. So I'm going to start with you, Nathan. You go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Rochelle, for the presentation, and really wanted to compliment you and the team at DFO who have worked hard on this so far. We know you've been chugging away at it hard over the past couple of years. And my question is, with the new minister in place, have you received any indication from the new minister, positive or negative, about the strategy and whether she plans to move forward and continue supporting your team in the development and of the strategy and building in appropriate funding in the next budget for it?
We've not been able to brief the new minister yet. She's been extremely busy learning the ropes of the department. We hope to do that in the next month, though. So hopefully that's going to give us a bit more ways of ensuring that we're fine with what we're proposing. I don't see how the department would necessarily go back on what we've been doing. Like, we've been making a lot of progress. People are interested within the department with that progress, and I hope that we can continue moving forward. As with every change in ministers, it's always there's always a learning curve and always a bit of a passing of the baton. So that's currently happening. Our new minister is from the East Coast, so that may also play a role in how she sees Atlantic salmon and what she's intending to do with the file.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, that's positive to hear.
And thank you for recognizing our work. And I wanted to say, like, I was not able to put them on the screen with me because I'm working from home today, but all my team is here today, like Livia, Nithra, and Emily. They're here and they're hearing you. They're taking some notes for me. And we're going to be taking your comments and your questions into account and moving them with us as we continue to work on the strategy.
Perfect, thank you. So we'll move to our last question here with Vanessa. You can unmute. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Rochelle. You mentioned in the What We Heard results that the voice you heard about stocking was in the middle, that it was to use stocking as a conservation tool alongside other conservation methods. I was wondering if you could speak a little more to that, especially with concerns about stricter permitting in 2024.
So what we heard is really like it was a complete rainbow of comments. So as I said, like we saw from completely we should never stock to all the way to like stock as much as you can. What we recognize is that there's a middle voice there that's not necessarily as loud as the other one, but that do see enhancement as a tool that we can use. DFO is committed to working on a policy that will provide some guidance on how to use this tool. So I'm hoping that this is going to come in the next year or two.
Okay, there's no concerns about traditional fry stocking, especially where it is an enhancement tool, of that being completely prohibited, or?
We're not there yet.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Wow, there you go. Thanks, Rachel. I think it will conclude, but once again, you know, doesn't mean it's the end of questions. I think it's been very apparent through this whole consultation process that the folks that are consulting and leading this initiative are very open to all comments and feedback from all over. So the door is open for that. So we'll make sure that your questions and your comments are shared with Rachel and her team. And we just want to say just a special thank you. It is a webinar series that we do, and we're trying to give an opportunity for folks to be able to share valuable information for the world of Atlantic salmon. And we just really appreciate, Rachel, for you taking the time to be able to share what DFO is doing, what their plans are, and how they came to where they are right now with the strategy and all the time and efforts that you guys have put in. So I appreciate it very much, and I'm glad that you are here. Once again, this is recorded, so we did get a lot of emails today, folks that could not attend, but really wanted to hear about what was heard. So it is going to be on our YouTube page by the end of the day. So it is recorded and will be available on there. So if you have someone that wants to watch it and couldn't be here today, please share that with them. And I also wanted to let you know that we do have some more presentations to come after the Christmas break. We do have some great presenters, some great topics. We have Dr. Van Zyl-Dion coming on the 24th of January. That's going to be talking on assessing the impact of in-stream barriers and climate change on wild Atlantic salmon population, persistence and production in forested boreal watersheds. So that's the next one that's coming up, and some great ones after that as well. So you can have a list of that on our website page, which will list all those presentations with the link to register. So once again, before we leave, just thank you, Rachel, thank you to your team, and for being here, and thank you everybody else for joining us today. And since this is the last webinar for 2023, I just wish you all a Merry Christmas and a great holiday season. So thank you.
Thank you.